anyone be filthier than Divine.
What are you going to do for me today, honey? It's something I haven't seen, I hope.
You could feel it. You could feel the electricity in this room of people that thought they had seen everything.
How's this for a center spread?
When you realize that Divine was a man, it's like, what? Whoa, wait, I want to see it again.
It's absolutely bloody disgusting, and that's the nicest thing I can say about it, really.
I'm going to cut that big fat worm right off.
It was the most disgusting film ever. A violent belch from the underground that shook America to its core.
There's one of two reactions. Look at it and laugh, or run screaming from the theater wanting to vomit.
At last, the battle of filth shall begin.
There's barely a moment in it that could be shown to any God-fearing household.
Dude, like, how did this movie even get made?
Culture always demands a group of artists to come along and tear it to pieces, and John certainly was in the forefront of that.
How John Waters' Pink Flamingos turned local theaters into vomitoriums, exposed the public's lust for the extreme, and ultimately transformed shock culture into pop culture.
It is obscene, but it's happily, joyously, excitingly, wonderfully obscene.
Hollywood spends $10 billion a year making movies. Some hit, some miss, some shake the world. In 1972, Pink Flamingos premiered on a single screen in a rented theater in Baltimore.
Not to be believed.
Absolutely outrageous. It was divine. Fabulous.
Gratuitous, shocking, random, and disgusting, it had audiences flocking to the theater in disbelief.
I may have to degrade myself in front of Divine's son. He's into a very strange sex scene.
You are gonna love my date. You'll like her as much as I do. I'm gonna bring her back real soon for you all to enjoy.
2 years later, it was a pop culture phenomenon in midnight movie houses across America, both loved and admonished.
Would you come out at midnight to see it?
Why go home at midnight? What are you going to see there?
I think it was a full-fledged attack on contemporary middle-class morality. It was almost a full-fledged campaign.
Waters had a gift for honing in on the public's secret fascination with the bizarre. It developed early in his childhood at an odd time in a quirky city.
I grew up in Baltimore in the 50s. Horrible. I mean, my parents were fine and my family was fine. You know, you had to be like everybody else. It was conformity.
Dinner time is happy time for this family. Father tells of helping a man whose hat flew off and went sailing down the windy street.
The black and white morality of the 50s was the perfect spawning ground for Waters' budding, twisted ambitions.
I completely wanted to own a dirty movie theater in a way. That made me want to do that. So I wanted to make forbidden movies when I was 7 years old, but I couldn't, so I did puppet shows.
As Waters entered his teens, films like Jack Smith's Flaming Creatures taught him that movies could be an event.
They would arrest everyone in the audience when it played. Well, that's really exciting. I mean, that's more fun than anything. Imagine if you went to the movies and the police raided it and took you away in a paddy wagon. Well, that would be good word of mouth, certainly. That's what inspired me about Flaming Creatures.
By the late 60s, the doldrums of the 50s were challenged by the wildly shocking and avant-garde art films of people like Andy Warhol and Paul Morrissey. Films that couldn't help but appeal to young suburban rebels.
Audiences went to see them because they thought they were going to see nudity, really. That's the reason they went. They pretended it was for art, but art meant dirty, and it still does in a weird way.
Taking a cue from Warhol, Waters assembled his own repertory of misfits, Dreamlanders.
But like Warhol and Paul Morrissey, John Waters used kind of a coterie of people that he knew, just talented people that happened to live in the neighborhood or who flocked to him in some way, and he made them stars.
I think there were some great actors in Pink Flamingos, but they were my friends, basically. And basically, it was a repertory group then. But it was not. No one ever sent me a headshot.
Utilizing Warhol's celebrity naming system and anticipating the public's lust for the grotesque, he found even crazier, raunchier alter egos for his actors, beginning with Glenn Milstead, a.k.a. Divine.
Divine's parents moved, I would say 6 houses away, and they had a nursery school called La Paix Day Nursery, and Divine was their only son, which was, you know, an odd advertisement for their nursery school.
Divine, the man formerly known as Glenn, was Waters' secret weapon.
Divine in those days was really my Godzilla, you know, a combination of Jane Mansfield and Gorgo to scare normal people and to frighten other drag queens who were very straight at the time and wanted to be their mothers and wanted to be Bess Meyerson or Miss America or who wanted to pass. Divine wanted to horrify.
With Divine as his muse, Waters made a slew of increasingly disgusting movies, pushing indie cinema into places no one wanted to go. Up-and-coming indie film distributors couldn't help but notice.
Under Trash Show and Multiple Maniacs had been distributed generally in porn theaters. So Bob Shea was in the early days of New Line Cinema, and I sent them Multiple Maniacs, and they said, well, no, but come back with something more slick. And if you can imagine, something more slick was Pink Flamingos.
I put the film on our 16mm projector and started looking at it, and I couldn't really believe what I had seen. And at that moment decided this was a film for us.
2 years before Pink Flamingos landed at New Line, Waters had found his inspiration in one of America's sickest events. In 1970, another far more dysfunctional family had triggered his imagination.
What brings you to Los Angeles?
I wanted to see the Sharon Tate murder trial, plus all the other Hollywood sights and sounds.
Waters used his artistic genius to transform the horrible into the humorous, and wrote what would become his tour de farce, Pink Flamingos.
There was a lot of referral to the Manson family in Pink Flamingos.
The Manson trial was a giant influence on Pink Flamingos, certainly. The trial at the end and who was the filthiest people alive. Pink Flamingos is dedicated to the Manson girls, something that I probably would not do today.
The story behind Pink Flamingos took the question of who and what constituted family and pushed it to the extreme.
Pink Flamingos is simply about two warring groups of disgusting people. There are the good disgusting people versus this other, this much meaner family.
It's very much a film about family values. Because after all, not only is the film about an American virtue of competition, but it is also about a nuclear family. And I think that's part of the brilliance of the film.
It's taking the 50s and the 60s idea of family and turning it on its head.
I try to have a very functional, dysfunctional family.
His real family remained supportive of his film aspirations. His father lent him $10,000, all Waters needed to make what would become his breakthrough hit.
I played Connie Marble. Connie Marble with her husband were vying with Divine to be the filthiest people alive. We artificially inseminated kidnapped girls and sold their babies to lesbian couples.
You know, Divine's family was just home trying to live a life of peaceful filth and be confident that they were the filthiest people alive.
You name it, it's in this movie. If you got a kink, you'll find it somewhere. It's just something to satisfy every sicko.
I heard that somebody eats feces in it. And I was like, what?
And the chicken sex scene is so sick and so relentless and so loud and so before PETA.
You are gonna love my dick.
One other part that really grossed me out too is the way that Edie ate the eggs. The little things that really aren't that gross, but are gross. And Divine squeezed into that tight red dress was shocking enough as it was.
All of this should have raised the shock factor to the limit, but in 1972, a porn film flourished into a box office sensation.
Deep Throat came out that year. Pornography was finally legal. This was a way to make a joke on what was left that would be shocking in a funny way.
632-0276.
It was Waters' duty to leave an indelible stain on pop culture. He fulfilled it by having Divine perform the unthinkable.
By the time you get to Divine eating the dog, you've been through a lot.
I remember the first time I saw it, I said, "Oh my God, that's got to be fake," and it wasn't fake.
That's talent. That's something that starts with T and ends with T. Talent. Who else would do that? Sure, Robert De Niro can gain weight. Big deal.
I saw Divine later that day, and he was completely beside himself. And he called up Johns Hopkins Hospital and told them that his child had eaten dog and what he should do. And they said not to worry about it. It happens every day.
The eating thing. I mean, basically, it wasn't illegal. It is now. It's the main thing that pornography won't show, and rightly so. I don't want it to be legal.
I think it's the future of city living.
Pink Flamingos premiered in 1972 at the 3rd Annual Baltimore Film Festival as the champion voice of underground cinema and outcast society.
The original audience to Pink Flamingos was all minorities that even hated their own minorities. Couldn't fit in anywhere. They were shocked, but laughing that they were shocked by something.
I think John Waters has got his finger on the pulse of America. I think he's got his thumb securely up America's ass.
Inspired by gimmicks used by B-movie maker William Castle, Waters seized the premiere as the perfect opportunity for the ultimate putrid promotion.
Now, John used to give vomit bags at the theater when they showed it because a lot of people would get physically ill. And I was one of them.
I saw people reeling out of the theater after seeing that, just stupefied. And these are people that were pretty scary people in the first place. Every show was sold out. That was the best time ever because no distributors, no deductible expenses. I just rented the hall.
But Waters' shocking indie puke fest couldn't stay underground for long. New Line Cinema picked up Pink Flamingos and, to Waters' horror, booked it into a gay porn theater in Boston.
God knows I have nothing against gay porn theaters, but Pink Flamingos, that isn't where I wanted it to premiere.
Waters had somewhere else in mind. For years, New York's Elgin Theater had been the mecca of midnight movies.
I always knew the Elgin was the place to open it in New York. It was the Radio City Music Hall of midnight movies.
The Elgin was great because you could see all of these, what they now call cult classics. It's the first time I ever saw Reefer Madness was at the Elgin.
There was a certain countercultural group of people who liked to go to the movies at midnight. And that was when you could see movies that would not show otherwise.
The Elgin regulars were the perfect connoisseurs for Waters' brand of bad taste.
Being a very enterprising guy, John had actually gone and somehow met Ben Barenholtz, who owned the Elgin Cinema. And John sort of came to us with our first booking in place.
It was the third full, but there was enough people there that the next week, they said 1 more week, there was a line around the block, the word of mouth. We knew then it worked.
It was just people who were fed up with kind of the social realities of America, the political realities of America at the time. People who wanted to go and have an enjoyable evening, maybe to smoke a little pot, and to enjoy an outrageous film.
Drugs happened to be on the scene at the time, and there was a lot of dope smoking going on, marijuana.
Some students searched for alternatives and new directions by experimenting with drugs, especially marijuana. Some people even encouraged getting high.
It certainly helps to be a little high to watch these movies, yes. But I don't condone any drug use.
It was a pothead movie. Still is.
Potheads were just one regiment in Waters' war on American values. Moving the marginalized into the spotlight, Pink Flamingos would become a major influence on nascent movements like punk rock almost immediately.
When you think about it, Pink Flamingos really has a lot of sort of kinship with the punk movement.
I think Divine always was just punk rock before there was such a thing. I didn't know there was such a thing. No one knew then.
Punk rock isn't just a style of music. It's sort of like just completely living by your own rules that you've set up for yourself.
When I had my red hair in Pink Flamingos, that was quite an ordeal. I had to use actual ink. David Lockery's blue hair came from the blue ink inserts from Magic Markers. It never occurred to me that it was trend-setting.
Pink Flamingos became a late-night magnet, attracting the denizens of outcast society.
It was divine, fabulous.
The gay community of 1973 reveled in the film's outrageous disdain for anything normal.
New York in the early 70s was a great time to be gay. It was well after Stonewall. There was a feeling of sexual liberation. It was long before AIDS, long before political correctness. And so it was just a happy-go-lucky time to be gay, despite the constant oppression that just was part and parcel of being gay.
It was growing real fast, and there were parades finally, and just 5 years earlier, everything was kind of behind closed doors, and now everything had to come out in the open.
If we want to hold somebody's hand on the street, if we want to kiss somebody and show some affection to somebody on the street, we want to be able to do that.
The influence on gay culture was irrefutable. Drag, in particular, was forever transformed and empowered.
Well, old school drag queens were so straight, that's why, no, they hated Divine. He influenced drag queens to be funnier and to be hipper.
I would lie if I said Divine wasn't an influence. She was so outrageous and so on and so big and so mean and so fabulous.
Divine would do anything that John asked him to do. He was amazing. And he sweat a lot.
Watch, as Divine proves that not only is she the filthiest person in the world,
She is also the filthiest actress in the world.
Due to the extreme nature of Divine's final scene, critics began hurling negative reviews at Pink Flamingos.
So the critics immediately got to work calling John Waters the Prince of Puke, the anal ambassador, the Sultan of Smut, the Duke of Bad Taste.
Waters used the bad press to the film's advantage and created another promotional blitz. Even the most jaded filmgoers were lining up to get in.
The word spread on it, and it became, you couldn't not tell, even if you hated the movie, you had to tell somebody you saw it.
He accomplished what he set out to do, and that was to provoke and to upset a bit and to shake the apple cart of American puritanical hypocrisy.
In 1972, Pink Flamingos successfully grossed out audiences, tapped into the shock aesthetic people were craving, and forever radicalized the landscape of pop culture.
Thanks to John Waters, America can't be shocked anymore.
What are you going to do for me today, honey? It's something I haven't seen, I hope.
After Pink Flamingos, in a way, what's left? This is the challenge. This is the gauntlet that John Waters has thrown down to the next generation of sort of disgusting filmmakers.
Happiness by Todd Solondz is a really great example of a new kind of twisted, shocking movie. I mean, people were horrified by Happiness, but you had to do something different. You had to kind of go towards a new taboo and kind of present it in a different package.
Jerry Springer, Howard Stern, Anna Nicole, Whitney, and Bobby, yawned. We're riveted, but we're not shocked anymore.
I mean, even now on Fear Factor, they may be eating, testicles and ovaries, but, John Waters was having Divine eat 30 years ago.
The lesbian couple buying a child was appalling and horrible and horrifying. Nowadays, that's, commonplace on Queer as Folk.
Something like Jackass. Johnny Knoxville and his friends, by making that movie Jackass, they're sort of a new form of shock value. Like, parents hate them, kids love them.
A lot of people say that me and my friends are, you guys are so crazy. But Pink Flamingos was 1972. I wouldn't do any of that stuff they did in the movie.
The real question is, do we owe the depravity of media in our society to John Waters? Hell yeah. And I'm just going to keep making everything worse and worse and worse, so. Big it up, John.
AMC. Gory matters here.
As his depraved sense of humor seeped across America, John Waters became a recognizable celebrity. And in a perverse twist of fate, some of his more recent films have become family favorites.
It seems like John Waters has become this sort of beloved Will Rogers-esque type character.
Everyone finally caught up with the grossness and the outrageousness, and now they're marketing it for middle America.
I think I've learned how to make better movies, but I'm proud of those old movies. I look back on those days with fondness, but I don't want to go back to those days. But it was our film school.
Congratulations to him for making movies like Serial Mom and Pecker and Cecil B. Demented. Big budget, mainstream movies. Hairspray, fabulous, huge family hit.
It's hard to think of John Waters as having a mainstream breakthrough film of any kind, but I think it would be Hairspray. Hairspray was the first that younger people could come to see. It was a family film. Kids love it.
In 2003, Hairspray became a Tony Award-winning Broadway musical.
We wanted his approval desperately when we wrote Hairspray, and so he finally came to hear the score, and he was sitting in the back and he started to cry. Of course, we'd like to say the tears were black.
And there's a Broadway musical coming out of Crybaby, too. And plus, not only was there a Broadway musical of Hairspray, there's going to be a movie of the musical.
Does Waters see a Pink Flamingos musical in his future?
Well, I think Pink Flamingos has always thought it could be an opera because it's dramatic and the fat lady does sing. And each
32 years ago, Waters showed us his wacky version of the family unit. Today, society is still struggling for a definition.
In San Francisco, city officials have issued thousands of marriage licenses to people of the same gender, contrary to the California Family Code.
The Republicans, they're always talking about family values. But I think it's time in America
We stopped talking about family values and started valuing families.
If you look at all of John's body of work, the thread that ties every film together is an idea of tolerance.
It does ask its audience to rethink its values somewhat, and asks the audience to forego its puritanical Weltanschauung and to be more accepting and more liberal.
Life is about not where you start, but where you're going. That's family values.
And the only way you can ever influence people that are against you is to make them laugh, and then they'll listen to what you have to say.
Pink Flamingos is as shocking today as it was in the 70s, but what started as a freak cinematic rebellion has influenced level upon level of underground culture and ultimately brought those outrageous sensibilities to mainstream America.
Back then, none of us ever dreamed that they would have the impact that they've had.
He was trying to use the shock and the weirdness to actually make a statement at the same time. And I think that it has great value in our culture today, tomorrow, and forever.
We had no idea that what we were doing was so extraordinary. No idea at all.
If Pink Flamingos made trash 1% more respectable, I've done the job that I was put on this earth to do.
That's the whole Waters touch, I think, John Waters' touch. Anything out of the ordinary, usually the exact opposite of what beauty would be to you or someone else, it is to him.